Our guest today, Chief Tony Sizemore, joins us from being the chief of police at the city of Cape Coral, which I recently learned from another podcast he was featured in. They are the second safest city in the state of Florida and one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Florida as well, if memory serves me well. I'm not going to share too much of the granular specifics of his resume. Just want to highlight a few things. He earned his master's degree from the University of San Diego, is active in a number of community organizations, including the Florida Police Chiefs Association. I believe if I got the acronym correct, and then the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Again, as well as many other organizations, including NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness in his respective region. Beyond all of his accolades and the work that he's done in the world of policing, the chief and I have not formally met, but recently engaged with him on LinkedIn. And for those of you who are on social media and on LinkedIn in particular, highly recommend you connect with him there. He shares some great insights and information spanning a variety of topics, but most recently, one of his posts that made an impact on me was one where he talked about being on the front lines with some of his team members. I think they were on a high risk SWAT operation, and he wanted to go out to not only show his team that he's there with them and cares about them, but rather than getting an after incident report, he could see what actually happens in real time and see the equipment that is essential for them, where there might be gaps. And that to me is a message, although not immersed in the world of policing myself, it's just a message on the importance of servant leadership. So I think we're going to get a lot from the chief today around that topic and that realm. But as always, our conversation will be vulnerable in nature. There's no script. So we'll span a variety of topics. With all of that being said, again, welcome to those of you who are here with us. And Chief, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that wonderful intro. It was like, who are you talking about?
Yeah, my pleasure. So I'd love to just start, perhaps in the cliche of, what got you into the world of policing. I'm sure there was perhaps a trigger or two, but I'll leave it to you to share with us what that may have been, if anything. What got you into the world of policing?
Well, my father was a police officer, but that wasn't the trigger. I respected what he did, but he was just dad at home. And I think later in life, I realized it's a credit to him that his identity at home was home. But I originally wanted to go into education. I wanted to be a teacher, maybe a gym teacher, football coach. I had I'd say decent athletic career, and I wanted to maybe further that. I realized that going beyond maybe small college ball wasn't in the picture for me. So maybe teach. And that ended up kind of being a real forecast into what I was going to do, which getting into policing seemed like a nice fit at the time. We're talking 30 years ago. I went to community college and I got my 2-year degree. And 30 years ago, a 2-year degree was about a 4-year degree now. And I said, well, after my associate's degree, I realized that school is really not for me. I don't think I want to keep going. So that kind of rules out being a teacher. And what can I do that can fulfill a 2-year degree? I like teamwork, the uniform. My father was a police officer. And at that time, the television show Cops was pretty decent. And I said, you know what, I can do that. And that's how I got into it. Semi-reluctant. In that I didn't know what I was getting into. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be. But thankfully, it's been so much better than what I thought it was going to be. And then later in my career, I'm sure we'll touch on it. I've been in leadership from small team, small groups, 7 to 10 people. I started that about 20 years ago when I became a sergeant. And then my sphere of influence grew to where now I lead the organization of almost 500 people. And it's really a lot of teaching. It's mentoring, modeling, and so I can't have come full circle to what I wanted to do, which is coach and teach. It was just a really weird way of getting there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's interesting that hearing that you started by saying that your father was a cop, but that wasn't really the trigger for you. That's so interesting because I think a lot of kids grow up in environments where what their parents do, they kind of just fall into or they get some pressure. Was your dad receptive initially when you said, "Hey, I want to go into policing," or was he a support, or I know sometimes parents can also say, no, don't do this. I've seen the worst of it.
That was him, right? When I said, I want to go talk to you. And he's like, all right, man, let's talk. I said, no, I want to make like an appointment. And he goes, okay. And I told him, this is where I think I'm going to go. You know, you provided really nice for our family. It's a calling, but it wasn't like the true, I want to be a cop calling. So he said, listen, and now I know, looking back, it's hard. Not physically hard. I'm not talking about, I mean, although parts of it are, it's emotionally hard. And you see a lot of trauma. Now we're very educated on that, but we're going back 30 years. Trauma was just, hey, it's tough, right? So he
Mm.
knew that I was going to be getting into that. There's also a lot of strain that, hey, it's your anniversary coming up and big deal. You got to work. Hey, it's Christmas. I joke all the time. The only person who worked more Christmases than me is Santa, right? So I'm going to work on Christmas. Hey, it's a big boat day at the lake. We're all going to go. Not me, you know, or
Mm.
even more recently, there's a Cat 5 hurricane coming. Where's everybody going? I know where I'm going. I'm going to work and I'm going to be at work for a month. And it's just a
Yeah.
package deal. My family has kind of grown to know that's just what dad does. So he knew that there was going to be a lot of strains, a lot of pulls. I'm on my first and only marriage, which is kind of rare in my
Yeah.
career, my profession. I'm very proud of that. But it is not common, you know, and
Yeah.
I've seen some tough things where I would see a coworker who had like an 8-year old boy and he was really proud of Little League, you know, and then I'd see him, it felt like 5 minutes later, hey, how's your son doing? Like, oh, we don't talk anymore. And it just
Mm.
rocked me to hear that. And I have heard that more than once. So
Yeah.
I was really intentional not to do that, but that's what my father forecast for me.
Hmm.
Be careful what you're getting into. But once he knew that as a young man, he wasn't going to convince me otherwise, then he put his arm around and really embraced me and has been such an ally of, you know, who to vent to, or this is why that's like that. This is what they mean by that. And I can't tell you how fortunate I was to have somebody like that. So the mistakes that I made, maybe socially or just corporate culture type mistakes, I was able
Hmm.
to make them in private conversations with my dad, and I didn't make them on the field. So it
Mm.
gave me, I think, almost a false perception of maturity beyond my years. But
Yeah.
it's good that I wasn't making those mistakes in public. I was able to share them and voice them. So he's been a tremendous ally for me for a long
Yeah.
time. So it's an unconventional way that he supported me in the role, but support
Hmm.
nonetheless.
That's amazing. Yeah, so much to unpack from that, and it leads me to think about mentorship, and I don't want to lose sight of that because I do want to talk about in this conversation. But you brought up the word trauma, and I've heard from other folks who've been in the world of policing, and I've had military personnel on here, and a wide variety of folks, people who've gone deep cover, et cetera, who've experienced these trauma type of situations, but for so long suppressed it because the industry, if you will, didn't embrace it. From your vantage point, Chief, what has, because it seems like, and again, I'm not immersed in your world, but it seems like there's been a shift where now people are more willing to speak up and talk about what's going on in their headspace. Why was it at a place where people like you, when you started out, couldn't talk about these traumas? And then what has allowed it to evolve to a place where there is more peer-to-peer support and wellness initiatives, et cetera?
That's a wonderful question. You know, going back when I first started, it wasn't even just mental health. I remember if you took a sick day, they would call you after you called in, and another sergeant would call you and go, "Hey, what's the matter with you?" "Oh, I'm sick." "All right, you don't feel good. We need you. Come on in." And they would, I don't want to use the word bully in like the 2025 sense. I'm
Mhm.
talking, they would bully you into coming in. And
Mhm.
so it wasn't even mental health. It was, you're not here with us. And it was really a way to instill team. I didn't look at it as a negative. I still don't look at that part as a negative. But when you talk about why did we suppress it or why did we not talk about it? It wasn't that we knew that that was an option and wanted to and were discouraged or suppressed from it. It wasn't even known, right? And I'll give a weird analogy. You look 5 years ago. Did you ever think you'd hear the word chat GPT or think that you could use AI to help you write an email? Or, I mean, you didn't think that you were missing it because it wasn't even invented.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the equivalent I use with mental awareness, mental health, any type of well-being initiative back in 1995, it wasn't that we wanted to do it and couldn't. It just wasn't there. So we
Mhm.
fast forward to now, and it's evolved into the military's doing this. We need to look at that as well. And you look at trauma in the military can be a fire hose, just a blast of heavy dose of trauma in a short period of time. Whereas police, fire, emergency medicine, some other fields like that, it's not that short 4-year enlistment period or 1-year deployment overseas of the fire hose of trauma. It's a garden hose over a much longer period of time. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you have the same amount of water accumulated in your bucket, right? There's a lot of trauma. So when the military started doing that, we started looking at that. And when corporate America, we do a lot of following in our field. We're a little slow to
Mhm.
respond. But when you see something that's working, we're also very good at copycat. So we
Mhm.
into that. So the beginning of wellness initiatives was we need to start a wellness program. So if you came in and said, "Hey, I'm going through some stuff. My wife and I are having some problems," and it manifests itself usually not like that. How mental health issues manifest themselves, and that's not exclusive to policing. I think that's anywhere. Is you're going to see some deficiencies. You're going to see tardiness. You're going to see a work product slippage. You're going to see attitude problems. And if you look at those independently, then those become disciplinary issues. But if you get to know your people, which is what we try to preach now, is I know you in blue skies, so I can really recognize you in a storm. Hey, what's going on? You are not you. What is it? And it may be nothing.
Mhm.
You tell me that it's nothing, or if it is something, the more I've invested in you emotionally and peer and servant leadership and heart-based leadership, you're going to be more open to tell me. And then that was a good first step, a tremendous first step. But back then we would say, okay, Adam, you've exhibited some wellness stuff, so go to the second floor, third door on the right, and go see Jenny. She's our wellness girl. And she'll give you some pamphlets, or you go to EAP, which guys nickname expose and punish, but I check the box, right? I'm in touch with Adam. I know he's got trauma, and I sent him down to the trauma department. And that was, wow, look at us. We're doing really good. But
Yeah.
man, what are you doing coming out of that second floor? Why are you doing that? If you go to EAP, are they going to give me a transcript of what you talked about? There's all kinds of misconceptions about it. So wellness isn't a program. It's not the third door on the left. It's not Jenny. Wellness is a culture that you
Mhm.
start with intentional conversations with people, that those micro relationships that you have, right? If you and 5 other people are on my team, I need to know you, and I need to know Scott, and I need to know Jim, and I need to know Beth. And what motivates me and what gets me out of bed and makes me want to do this job, I'm willing to bet, is nothing like what motivates you or Scott or Jim or Beth. I, as a leader, need to find out about you. And then that wellness culture starts with the relationship. And it starts with knowing that you can come to me, you can be vulnerable with me, and I can help you without exposing you, without embarrassing you, because we become a family. If an idea is mine and I try to sell it to you, it's my idea, and I got to win you over. But if I can get you to think it's your idea too, then it's our idea, and you're going to fight for it too. And the same
Right.
I found is in relationships. If you work for me, but we develop a relationship one to one, peer to peer, and we're all one cohesive unit, it becomes our shared wellness culture in that sphere of influence. And if everybody does that, it becomes woven into the fabric of the organization as your point of sale wellness initiatives, if you will. And then we as an organization have to go further to endorse it. We instituted peer support, full-fledged, where we train people to be able to do that. We have EAP, but we have other alternatives for it. We do initiatives where if you went on a very traumatic call, you went on a child drowning, and it really affected you right then, I'm not going to tell you, hey, we're off in 2 days. We're going to do a critical stress debriefing in 2 days. So suck it up for 2 days and then we'll talk about it. Right now, we'll bring you in. Is there somebody that I can put you with? And a lot of that came from officer involved shootings. It's in the protocol that if you're involved in an officer involved shooting, you tell us who you want. I want my wife there. I want my pastor there. I want my neighbor Jim, who I have chicken wings and beer with on Sundays. Whoever you want, we're going to bring them in point of sale to help you. And
Mm,
it doesn't have to be that type of an incident for something like that to happen. We have quiet rooms, we have massage chairs, we have therapy dogs in the building. You name it, we have something for everybody. And even if you don't need it, or you need it and you don't want it, we make sure that I tell you or anybody else there's help for you, there's people to talk to, there's avenues. But if you don't need an avenue, you're not a monster either. I don't want you to start second guessing yourself where, well, I don't want to talk to anybody. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. You may not need to talk to somebody today, but you maybe later, or maybe you don't need any of that. You just really have a base. So any way you choose in that realm, you're going to be okay. And even if you don't need it, you never get exposed to where you would need something in a critical incident like that, to know that your organization has that and has your back. I think that in and of itself is a wellness initiative, to just know that you have it.
absolutely. So well said. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. You brought up the word culture, and it sounds like you're super intentional on the culture you're building there. And I'm not surprised by that in learning about some of the work that you're doing in your personal life with the ADS, the performance consulting and coaching. I think you're unique from my vantage point, Chief, in that it seems like you have a understanding and care for business, but running a police agency. And I think there's definitely an intersect, right? Leadership can be interchangeable, but you're bringing some core concepts that are applicable in corporate America from like a culture perspective and bringing it there, which I have always thought that that's essential and necessary. But again, from my vantage point, some of these topics are woo woo in the world of policing, because it's like, what am I gonna? I'm gonna meditate, or I'm gonna go to this massage chair. I'm a police officer, right? I can't have any struggles. So my question to you is, how have you overcome some of that? Because I'm guessing it's been in existence, right? Especially as you rose through the ranks, and you're now leading some of your peers, those who you were on the front lines with, and now you're wanting to implement some of these ideologies that they might not agree with. What do you do to get their buy-in to ensure culture can sustain in spite of the naysayers, if you will?
Sure. A couple of things there. It's interesting. I'm glad you noticed that when you talk about business and policing, leadership is leadership, because leadership is about connecting with people. So any business that you're in, you're going to need to connect with people to be successful. So we just leaned into that. So the framework and the systems are interchangeable. Anybody could, if you never did a day in policing, I could show you the manual on how to lead people policing, supervise and manage them. You'll know what's an approved report, what's an appropriate amount of, show up on time, go home on time. Anybody can do that. It's the connection with people. That's the big difference. And when you talk about how did we get it into the organization, when you make it a human element like that, even the most crusty, hardened, older person understands human connection. That is what policing is. And if you get detached from that, we have other ways to try and get you back to remember what you got into the profession for. But there are some who, look, I believe in it. It's good for them. It's just not for me. That's okay. But most people bought into it, right? And all of our new people, Gen Z, Gen Y, it's not weird to them. It's not, woo woo, as you said. That it's expected, right? They have come up in that culture where I don't care if I'm, Iwo Jima Part Two. I got to have my yoga mat for when we're done planting the flag. It's just not foreign to them. And for the older generation who it is foreign to, there's a couple that it's almost like a bad haircut where it's just got to grow out. They gotta filter out, time for them to go, and they've timed out of the organization, and they get replaced with new people. So it was a slow turn. There's still some people who maybe haven't embraced it fully. It's weird. The higher you go, your peer circle gets smaller, and the people you can lean on gets smaller. It would be weird for me to call in a line level person who's 24 years old and have them provide peer support to me. I'm over 50 years old. the leader of the organization. It's just not a fit. It's a square peg in a round hole. So my ability to network and debrief and peer support, if you will, is very limited. So I do a lot of fixing myself. And I know that's, for some listening, they're like, oh my God, how could you, do you know what this podcast is about? We don't do that. I do a lot of because I have to do a lot of that in all aspects of my life, especially at work. Because if you, I paint a picture for you. On the third floor of the building is the administrative suite. And the door to enter is on the left if you're looking at the hallway. So if you can picture this long hallway, the left is where you enter. You have captains here, deputy chiefs here, and you keep moving right. Well, the last door on the right is mine. If you go to the right of me, you're going to fall 3 stories. There's nobody to go ask. There's nobody to the right. So I've had to encounter a lot of firsts in the 5 years. Next week will be 5 years I've been the chief. There's a lot of stuff that, man, they didn't leave this in the desk for me. So wellness and fixing that kind of stuff, a lot of that I've had to do myself, but I have embraced it and I do talk to people. There are people in my life that I do speak with. I've really reconnected with my faith over the last few years. So I do a lot of prayer. I've developed a relationship with the head pastor, the priest at my church. And he's affiliated with our chaplaincy program. We have a chaplaincy program at the police department, have for 30 years. But I have to look for alternate ways to do that. It's not as simple for me to use. We have what's called a Lighthouse app. Beautiful. And that's the way people do stuff, right? You mentioned LinkedIn. I've been on social media for about 8 minutes, right? So just doing apps, it's not for me. So I have to find alternate ways to be able to I guess, enhance or nurture my wellness. But I'm doing it. I understand it. I don't suppress it. I don't just devolve into somebody that I wasn't 30 years ago. I am actually proud of the fact that I still talk to people I went to school with, and I'm still the same guy, whether that's good or bad, from when I was about 15.
That's awesome, Chief. No, from my vantage point, that's a good thing. I mean, unless there are habits that we're, stuck to that might not be serving us well. But I think oftentimes when folks rise to leadership roles, they can forget where they came from. And that's particularly why I like the one post you shared on LinkedIn where you said, I'm not too good to go out in the streets to see what, the men and women are dealing with on a day to day. It's admirable. And thank you also for sharing your vulnerability. From my vantage point, that's an essential to effective leadership. I know we can't stand before an organization or in this case, your department and agency and talk about all the things that you might have going on in your personal life because there can be an inherent now, lack of motivation, if you will. But we, have a responsibility, I think. And I view everyone, whether they're leading a family or they're leading a 10,000 person organization, we're all leaders in some regard. And I think we have a responsibility to take care of self. So what have you done, particularly to your level of comfort, to take care of self? It sounds like you have a network of people, which is amazing. Leadership is lonely. You're talking to folks. Is there anything else that has allowed you to perform and show up at your best?
Sure. I wish I could tell you that I completely have work-life balance. I did a post, it wasn't that long ago, where I said work-life balance is a myth. There is no such thing as work-life balance. What we need to achieve is work-life harmony, because I joke at work, and the guys always know, man, you must have been taking out the trash, because I tell them, I took out the trash yesterday, and I got to thinking, and here's an idea. And you're not wrong if you're home and your family's home and you're cooking dinner and you're going to do homework or go play catch or take the kids to Little League or the grandkids. You're not wrong if you're thinking about work. Don't demonize yourself for doing that. Don't let it dominate where you're not there, but you're not absent from your family if you're thinking about work. And conversely, if you're at work and you happen to go on VRBO and pick out that cabin that you guys want to get in a couple of weeks, or what excursions you want to do on the cruise, you're not a terrible employee, or you're not no longer a high performer. There's a hybrid there. So understanding that, but having said that, when I go home, I really make it a point that I try to do. I've kind of unknowingly until right about now when we're talking about it, I've kind of turned into my father in that my son, he knows what I do. He's old enough to know what I do, but he doesn't know me like that. He knows
Mhm.
me as dad, who gets on him about algebra homework, who reminds him to brush his teeth, things like that. So, and those are the beautiful things that really ground me. When I do have to take the garbage out or go help the neighbor next door, I'm just a guy, and that helps me, and that helps me really differentiate between the two. And then when I go to work, I mean, it's game time. There's a lot of people that are counting on me to perform, and they know I'm vulnerable. They know that things happen. Of course, I'm a person, but I have to compartmentalize in a healthy way. See, that's another thing that you don't want to compartmentalize. You don't want to push. I think it's unrealistic to think that. I just do. I have to compartmentalize because people know, oh yeah, I know you're a human, you're going through stuff, but this is what we got and they need me to perform. So I have to do that. I'm guilty sometimes. I feel guilty sometimes because I'm all in at work, but I can't I don't leave it all on the field because I do have a family that still want to maintain that family when I'm done with this. So I feel like I'm not 100% at work,
Mhm.
even though I know I am, but maybe not. And when I'm home, I have to go. I can't be there tonight. There's a city council meeting, or there's a community event that I have to go to, or somebody was involved in a critical incident and we were going to watch a movie tonight. We got the popcorn, we're ready. And one of my officers got in a very, very serious car crash and is at the hospital. They know now. I'm not home. I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to go sit with him. I'm going to wait until his wife comes or his parents come, anymore, or his children, and because that's just an obligation that I have. So I know I'm doing the right thing, but there's a guilt that no matter what, even though my family understands it, I'm not there for movie night.
Yeah.
And when there's a big event at work, and you know what, I'm going to sit this one out because I'm going to go to the school because my son won an award. And I probably should be at that, but I trust them. And so in a lot of ways, here's a vulnerability for you. I feel like there's a level of failure, a degree of failure on both ends of the spectrum every day. And maybe that's
Mm.
unreasonable, but that's a real thing that I feel.
Yeah.
I'm always a little bit less than all in on both. And maybe that's a success, but there are times where it feels, like maybe not.
Yeah. That's deep stuff, and I think relatable to everyone who's listening or may hear this later because there's no you mentioned manual before about the leader before you might have followed. There's nothing left behind. For being a human, there's no manual, right? Like we're all trying to figure this thing out as we go along, and I think the key is that I'm pulling from you is self-awareness, like recognizing that sometimes you realize you might not be your very best at home, or sometimes you might not be your very best at work. But simply noticing that, I think, can get you to show up a little better, right, in the next moment. And that's powerful stuff. Um, as it relates to, you mentioned about like an officer maybe being involved in something, like a car accident, I think was your example where he or she's in the hospital. When there are traumatic type of events that happen in your agency, whether it be an officer involved shooting or something that gets media attention, how do you communicate both to them and the public in that kind of crisis moment? I know that is one of your strengths, as as I read through your bio, that's something you've got a lot of deep experience with, and not surprised in just hearing you articulate some of the things you are today. But when there's something out there, how do you communicate? Is there a strategy that you rely on to ensure all stakeholders? Because I assume you want to keep the trust of your people, but you also need to tell the public the raw truth. What do you do to ensure that crises are managed effectively by way of communication?
Being very tactical in the way that you plan it out. I like to give the appearance that I wing it a lot because I don't know, it's worked for me, but there is no winging it. It is very, very calculated and tactical in the way I do it. I'll give an example, not the car crash, but we had an incident where a young man, just a citizen, was in a downtown part of our city, very, very intoxicated, and to the point where he wasn't able to care for himself. He was laying down on the road. And we had a couple of officers show up, and without getting into all of the details, there was more they could have done. They didn't do anything to this gentleman. There was no abuse, nothing like that. But I have a standard that there are avenues that they could have done to maybe go a little bit extra. And we told them, hey, you can't be here, shoot him off. Well, tragically, that young man walked, and probably within 4 minutes of that encounter, walked right into a canal and drowned. So we didn't put two and two together. We were working a missing persons case on that. He was an adult, but his family reported him missing. So one half of my building is working a missing persons case. And then some of the people underneath me said, hey, are you aware? And that's a terrible thing to have said to you when you're a police chief. Hey, are you aware? It's not going to be good when you hear something like that. I said, nope, let's hear it. And well, one is the other. I said, okay. So we come to find out what happened. I'll fast forward. I dismissed those two officers. That in and of itself is very, very difficult. That's a traumatic thing for the organization, for the city, for trust, but for me, because I'm the one who hired them. I had them raise their right hand, swore them in. I'm also the one that would have to do that. I would never delegate that type of a responsibility to relieve somebody. So they were fired. I needed to let the media wanted to know because there was a big presence looking for this guy. So they start asking, are there any reports? What's up? There's a missing person? Is that the missing person that you found? What's going on? Well, they're going to find out what happened. So there is no scenario where they just knew it was a missing person and we found him. No, 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 no. They're going to find out. So once that's the given in our little geometric proof here, how do you ensure that the message is delivered your way? Not sugarcoating, not lying, not twisting, but delivered straight.
Yep.
I do that. So there, you talk about the stakeholders involved in that, the individuals who were relieved. I needed to tell that young man's parents what happened. So I brought them in and I told them face to face, this is what happened. We let you down. And that went about as well as you could imagine. That's a tough conversation, but they need to hear it from me. They need to be mad at me. Give it to me. That's what I'm there for. I also know that about 8 seconds after they leave my office, they're going to the media. So while they were in, I had a lot of help with this. I had a message in the can, so to speak, that I was going to send out to we call it the police list. Folks, this happened. These are the actions that I took. And by the time you're reading this, I will be behind the podium doing a news conference. Why would you do that, you ask? Because they're going to hear it and they need to hear it from me. I don't want them hearing it secondhand from the family, who is raw as can be. And the media would love that. And it is going to be what happened, but it's not delivered in the way I want to be delivered. And I'm going to be playing defense, which means you all are going to be playing defense by working at the building. So this is what happened. This is the actions that I took. I just spoke with the parents. I'm going on the news. This is why I'm going on the news. This is why it's important. It doesn't reflect everybody else. So I won't get into the whole message, but
Sure.
very identify and know all of the stakeholders. So let my boss know. I need to and this is ongoing. I let my boss know. So
Sure.
no surprise on that day. Gave him the option to be with me if he'd like to be with me. I don't need your support. I'm an adult, but if you want to stand there endorsing it, it's up to you. My door's open. So that was there. Met with the family, immediately sent that out to the police department, and then walked right to. I hit send and walked downstairs to an assembled press corps and did that. So I hope that answers your question. How do you do that with all the stakeholders? And each situation is different, but you have to be experienced enough and know who needs to know, how does it need to be delivered, and there's nobody else that's going to do it. There are certain times when it's you.
Yeah. No, it's very very good stuff, Chief, and it sounds like again very structured and intentional. And what I love that you said is that there's truth telling there, right? You're not trying to manipulate the situation. You're holding those accountable who need to be held accountable. I think sometimes leaders are afraid to admit mistakes, and therefore trust is now diminished. And although you weren't the one on the front lines who'd come across this gentleman, two people that you had hired, that you made the conscious decision, maybe not you individually, but some of your, captains, et cetera, did, to be a part of the force, had let down that standard. So that's the thing I really took away from it, is the importance of truth telling. I want to add on to this question and ask you, how important is, I've asked this question of a lot of medical practitioners, and they can get a stigma of sometimes being cold, right? Where they're just so used to this that they just deliver it like it's not a human. How important, from your vantage point, is delivering verbiage in a soft tone with compassion, with perhaps an element of empathy, for you not knowing, like, what does that, you don't need to share the words, of course, especially specific to a case, but in your experiences, is that essential to maybe get some more buy-in from all of these stakeholders when your tone is a certain way versus another?
100%. It's really a golden rule. I've had to have bad news told to me. I don't want you to hide it. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. I need the news, but there's a way, deliver the message in the way you'd want the message delivered to you. So there was a definite compassion with the parents. There was a fatherly, this is tough love and this is why we're doing this, to the troops when I put it out. And when you're speaking to the media, when I speak to the media, always I need to remember, and I teach people this, you are not talking to them. They're the vehicle in which you are talking through to the community. So the tone I took was a community that has a default setting of trusting us and believing in us. And I needed to face them and tell them that, mom and dad, we wrecked the car, right? You have to tell them what happened. I'm using the media to do that. I'm not convincing reporters. I'm using their equipment. I'm using their platform to be able to communicate with the community. And you mentioned something just before about mistakes. Leaders have a tough time sometimes admitting mistakes. I said at that press conference, and I've taken it, I've stolen it from myself and used it a lot, that effective organizations, winning cultures, and high-performing individuals are not measured by the absence of mistakes, but rather they are measured by what you do when mistakes are uncovered. Do you fix it? Do you own it? And do you put systems in place so you don't do it again? And I'm not reading that. I remember it because I've used it a lot. And that
Yeah.
really hit home that day. So
Hmm.
can't
Yeah,
run from a
great.
mistake. They happen. Everybody knows
Yes.
that. But what are you going to do?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And how did, with that particular situation, how did your team respond? Maybe some of those folks who were used to being on patrol with maybe those two officers that you let go, was there resistance internally, from, colleagues thinking you maybe made the wrong decision? And if so, how do you navigate those waters so that you can continue to keep their trust too?
Sure. I think you have to be very steadfast in your belief on that. I knew in my heart that as hard as it was, that I made the right decision. And what I would teach them or try to tell them is, I don't like it either. As much as you don't like it, I don't like it. But let's switch roles for a minute. What would you do? And to a person, they no, I understand. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. And also in that, there's a system in place where we are a union shop or collective bargaining shop. So there's appeals in place and grievances and arbitration, and went through that. I don't personalize that. That wasn't an attack on me. That was an exercise of the system. So I had to make sure that I reminded myself of that, because I am a human and I'm like, I know I did the right thing and it was tough, and now you're challenging me and I got to defend it. And it's a whole big thing. It's a year-long process to go through that start to finish. But you just need to understand what the system is and that everybody's playing their part in this really bad production.
Yeah, yeah. Got it. Super, super insightful. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to dive a little more deeply to your level of comfort, of course, in your personal life. I think I shared with you on the front end. One of the things that we're, striving to do within Mindful Journey, the individual podcast piece, but the collective itself, is to kind of normalize and humanize this shared experience of life that we're on. I think from my vantage point in this social media era now, so many people get on there and assume that, you know, such and such down the street, they've got the perfect life, that, you know, maybe they're a better chief than me, or maybe they have a better wife than me, or maybe they've got better kids or better husband or better house or better body. And I've learned, you know, just in I'm always curious about human behavior. I'm intrigued by people in general, and I've learned that everyone's got something, right?
Yeah.
We all have faced difficulty, and what we're wanting to do is let listeners know that it's okay to be going through things, and then hopefully offer them some coping mechanisms to get through. So I share that for the forthcoming question I have for you to kind of give context as to why I ask it. But what is the most challenging thing that you've gone through in your personal life? And again, to your level of comfort. And then what do you recall having done to get through it?
Sure. I'll answer it by giving you a series of things, right? Because I don't think people have experienced just one thing, or if you're listening and you have more than one thing, you're not broken or wrong too. So, my wife's parents, my mother-in-law got cancer. Found out probably a couple days before our wedding. It didn't tell us, so we had a really nice wedding night. But then it was a difficult several years of care. And my father-in-law, we lost him 11 months later. That was a very, very difficult thing for us as a family because we were close, but also being the plus one on the trauma train. You know, I can never relate equally to the pain that my wife felt my own pain, but to be a supportive spouse, that's a challenge. This one is personal and policing. There's two of them. My very, very close family member of mine was murdered in 2008. And it was just, as you can imagine, just utterly devastating for the family. So, you know, I've turned that into something that I hate to say the word use, something that has benefited me in identifying with victims of crime, having gone through that.
Mm.
Another wild one was another very close family member of mine had a mental health episode, and my own police department, we shot and killed him on a suicide by cop. Extremely difficult. And at the time, I was in our what we call the Professional Standards Bureau, which investigates those types of incidents. It was a lawful but awful situation, we call it, with the sprinkling on top of, I've known this guy since we were little boys, and it's going to make for an interesting Thanksgiving this year with his mother at the table. That's a very, not a lot of people go through that. But it's helped me in my professional life because when we have had officer involved shootings and family members, I know where you're at. I didn't read about it, didn't see it on TV or hear it at a symposium. I know where you're at.
Mhm.
And then there was an instance with our son, my wife and I's son, where that one's, I don't want to get too personal in it, but we were really touch and go for a while where you just don't know if we're going to pull through. And thankfully we did, but it's a long process. And it's very difficult to navigate and continue to press on because bills are due and things, you have to find joy. And so that's very difficult. So the big question is, what do you do with all of that stuff? Well, I know exactly what you said in the lead up. Everybody down the street with the beautiful life and they all have problems. My job allows me to see that everybody's got problems. So I know that other people are going through this. There's the meme or the T-shirt or the bumper sticker that everybody's going through a battle you know nothing about. That's true. That hits home. So just trying to express it outward to be kind to people. It didn't help the situation I was in directly, but it gave me an outlet of something positive to know that maybe I'm helping them. If I put it out in the world, it's gonna come back to me. And then the instance with my son really, really is what connected me back to faith. And it was a point where I had a conversation with God one night and said, I've done everything I can do, and I'm pretty good at moving mountains. I can do a lot of stuff. You know, I'm not saying that to you, but I've achieved a lot, and If I set my mind to it, I'm going to get it. If we're going to do something impossible, it's not impossible, we're going to get it. But this was at the point where I said, you know what? I put it in your hands. I am tired. I can't do it. And I thought I was a faithful person, but I really wasn't. And I let go and I said, you do your will, and I'm going to live with it. All I ask is that if it goes that way, give me the coping skills to be able to do it. And, you know, thankfully it turned around, but I couldn't be vulnerable in that relationship and get what I want, so to speak, and then, all right, man, we're cool, and then move back. That was a lifelong commitment to do that. So faith
Mm,
is huge. It's a home, a foundation, something I know I've strayed from. If you don't have any base or foundation, and you don't even have to be faith based, but if you have a definitive home and of right and wrong, of where you should be, you know when you stray where you need to come back. If you don't have that, you have no idea how far off you've drifted. So
mhm.
I can only speak for what has worked for me, which is, you talk about the ultimate vulnerability is surrendering control. And man, that's tough, especially when you're used to controlling. And I did that, and it was a life changer for me.
Yeah.
And I hope I didn't go too far in that direction for the show. But
No.
you asked me what works. That's what did it for me. It's not a trick. It's not, God's not an ATM, where you go and ask and get. It was a true. I'm ready for you to equip me with the tools for the bad news, and
Yeah.
the good news came, but the relationship remained. So I wish I would
Yeah.
have had that sooner, but I don't think I would have gotten it sooner. It took that.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful stuff, Chief, and thank you again for just being so open with us throughout all of today, but particularly those four instances shared, and the deeply personal one, with how you navigated the situation with your son, and bringing up your faith. And yeah, there's no script ever in these, and so even if somebody's not a practitioner of a particular faith, or doesn't have a desire to get into faith, one thing that to try to connect the dots here for those folks who might be listening, that I'm pulling from that is, this surrendering and letting go of the need to control. And then the other thing you said that hit me, was particularly about, the friend that you had who got murdered. You kind of took that painful instance and turned it into a positive, if you will, for when you deal with something in the future. You're now knowing how to deal with others who are going through it, and being vocal about it and vulnerable. So I think those are both two mechanisms that we all can learn from, to number one, let go of that story we hold on to so tightly, and then number two, be open about and speak about. So that's super powerful, super helpful, and very, very grateful to you. Um, I want to tie this back to leadership, and particularly, somebody who's leading a high performing organization of close to 500 people who are in pressure filled moments. Someone who's listening today, who's in a comparable circumstance, but has a tough time letting go, is there something beyond faith in the workplace that you've relied on to say, you know what, to like talking to yourself, Chief, like I don't need to have all the answers. What do you do to ensure that? Because I've been guilty of this, right? Where I think my way is going to be the only way that we can do this, and that can be our stronghold that really sets us back. So, any thoughts on that? I know it's a broad, not real question there, but just want to get insight as to like how somebody can let go in high pressure moments.
Sure. If you don't let go, you are going to cap at a certain achievement level because you only have so much capacity. And when I teach in the police department, teach leaders, I teach other police departments, I talk about three things that a successful leader needs. Number one, you put the right people in the right spot, right? Square pegs into square holes. Number two, fully invest in them with what we talked about earlier today with the emotional investment, but I'm talking nuts and bolts investment. Give them the tools, the training, and the freedom to do the job. They are professionals. They have come to do the job. And the third, which is the most important, is get out of the way. Let them do it. You pick the right people. You've given them everything. Now get out of the way and watch how far they go further than if you were directing and capping them or stifling their creativity, right? That's how they'll grow. So if you look at it in that context, you need help. And you should have a lot of those people around you, or depending on the size of your organization, maybe one and maybe many. When you're going through an issue, a challenge at work, or an emotional challenge where I just don't have the bandwidth and I need you to take over so I can deal with this, trust it and let go. You will grow as a person. You will grow emotionally. You'll give yourself the ability to see clearly, or maybe a path will illuminate that you didn't see if you can let go of some of the other stuff. You can control a lot, but you can't control everything. And sometimes you can choke out the oxygen to get out of it. And
Yeah.
so that's operationally to do that. But I would use the exact same principles for emotional support. If you're not into one way and you want to talk to people, then you need to talk to people. You need to let them in. You need to tell them. And
Mhm.
letting them in is a form of letting go of control. Control is the message, your vulnerability. I'm impervious to any of these human things that happen. It's not true. You're not fooling anybody. And you're exhibiting the same sort of behaviors or walls that you would be on guard for with your staff. You're doing it too. So you let go, show that vulnerability and ask for help. Hey, what do you think about this? Or
Mhm.
I need you to do it because I can't do it all and I got to do this. Lean on people.
Mhm.
People naturally want to help. And if you create an environment like that, it's gonna come back to you in a positive way. So that's
Mhm.
part of letting go too.
Love it, love it, love it. I could keep this going forever, but I want to be mindful of your time. So I've got a question that came in from a listener, and I want to close just with one question, unless I see any other questions pop up here. But the guest asks, how has reconnecting with your faith impacted the way you approach the day-to-day ups and downs? This came in earlier in the conversation when I think you first brought up faith, but yeah, how has reconnecting with your faith impacted the way you approach the day-to-day ups and downs?
I think, and this isn't only for or exclusive to policing. This is for banking or lawn care, anything that you do. PTA is that there's something bigger than what you're doing. As important as I think my job is, it's only such a micro dot on the universe, right? I'm really put on earth to serve others, to help people, and when I pray in the evenings, I pray for the ability to reflect positivity onto the world, to use the platform and the ability that I have. I'm very, very blessed to be in a position to work at a place I love and have a huge amount of influence on 500 people, but also the greater nearly 250,000 people who live in the city. I have a good influence on that. I pray that I have the ability to do that well and to do that the right way and to remember what I'm really there for. It's not the Tony show. I'm just a servant in the world to try to make it a little bit better. That little, now I still get mad. I still have stuff like everybody else. I still have things that were supposed to go left and they went right. And oh my God, how do you do that? There's just a better way to handle that and to remember that they're humans that are doing that. They're well intended. If they're not, they're going to be gone. But if they're well intended, we're going to coach them. We're going to lead with love. We're going to use the golden rule: treat people the way you like to be treated. Doesn't mean you don't correct somebody. Doesn't mean that you don't, fix a problem, but fix it in the way that you would want the problem fixed in your life. And if you do that, I think you're 75% of the way there, and you'll pick up the other quarter.
Mhm. Great humility and great perspective there. That's yeah, good stuff. Another note had come in, and it's a little bit lengthier. Carlos says, "Very good conversation. Thanks again, Adam. This chief is speaking so many truths and facts of what leadership should be. As a 23-year law enforcement officer, recently retired, and a U.S. Marine Staff Sergeant, I can tell you there are not too many leaders out there that speak like this. Good job, Chief, and thank you." And he went on to say the part about faith really spoke to me, how the chief asked God for strength and wisdom and how the relationship continues. Strong message. Carlos, thank you for that. Carlos, I obviously don't know everyone that we serve in Mindful Journey, but I happen to know Carlos personally. He retired from City of Miami Gardens PD. He was very active in Mindful Journey. The City of Miami Gardens is a client of the overall Mindful Journey platform. They get access to these conversations, and he was always on and adding great insights and good questions. So, Carlos, if you're still with us, thank you. That's good stuff, and I'm sure the chief likes to hear that.
Very humbled. That's great. That's a great group of people over there at Miami Gardens. I got good relationships with all the cities with Miami in it. Miami Beach, North Miami Beach, City of Miami, Miami-Dade
Yeah.
Sheriff's Office. They're just wonderful people. I'm really, that's a humbling thing to hear from somebody with that background to say that. That made my day.
That's good. Well, I'm happy. I'm happy that it did, and you made our day, Chief. This is good stuff, and no cliche. Not giving you lip service. I love these conversations. I'm blessed to talk to folks from so many different backgrounds, but really, you've been wonderful today, and really grateful for you. I'd like to close with something inspiring. I mean, I hope that the listeners have felt there's been inspiration interwoven throughout all of this, but. In spite of all that which we shared today, there still might be somebody listening. It's not lost on me that might be going through a divorce in this moment, right? Might be facing a bankruptcy in this moment, may have lost a loved one in this moment. So maybe they're hearing some of these strategies, Chief, that you're sharing of, being vulnerable or going to, get engaged with a massage chair if they're inside of an office environment. But if they're feeling hopeless, helpless in this moment right now, what's your message to them to keep going?
This is not the end, right? It's not over. And, I don't hate, I'm going to go back to faith again. You look at the greatest comeback story of all time, where somebody was killed and 3 days later they came back and a lot of people thought it was over. It's not over. So lean into what it is that you need to lean into. If you are a single parent and things are very tough, remember who you're doing it for, right? If you have people in your life who love you, who care about you, you may not be able to connect with them right now. Maybe that's the source of the problem. But doing nothing is not an option. Don't allow yourself to do nothing. Move forward, even if you're moving forward 1 inch, even if you talk to a stranger, or sometimes, you look at it, you're tumbling down a hill right now, and you need to grab onto something to stop. And we use this in is a different direction, but in policing, if you're having a morale problem, the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, right? You got food, water, basic shelter, all the way up to I can complain about the Wi-Fi being out, self-actualization. So, and everything in between. Well, when you're having a morale problem at work or you're having a crisis in life, you are tumbling down the hill. You really can't lean on your self-actualization, right? So in this analogy, I'll say you need to be motivated because of the profession of policing, right? You got into this field, hey, that ain't doing it for me. I'm still tumbling. Okay, do it for our city. The heck with this city, still tumbling. All right, well, we got to grab onto something. You're still going. Do it for the department. This department screwed me over. Okay, do it for the shift. I'm done with this shift. Do it for your zone partner. That ain't it. Do it for you. Do it for the name on your shirt. Do it for your parents. Do it for your grandparents. Do it for the way that you were raised. Keep going smaller and smaller and smaller. We always think of the bigger picture. I'm going to flip it on its head. Think of the smaller picture and keep going smaller and smaller and smaller until you got that root on the side of the mountain to grab and you stop falling. That gives you a minute to breathe, dust yourself off, and start to rebuild your motivation to that self-actualization. You're at the bottom of Maslow. You need to work your way back up to the top. Same thing happens in your personal life. You are tumbling. What are you doing it for? Who are you doing it? When I say it, I mean life. Who are you grinding for? Who are you going to work for? Who are you trying to find a job for? What is it? Is it for humankind? Is it for my legacy? Is it for my family? Is it for the big house or the boat? No, it's because I got to have my child eat. You found your motivation, and then grab it. Dust yourself off and start moving and building, because today the trauma that you're having right now, the despair that you're having right now is not forever. That is
Yes.
something that you can control. And that's what I would tell people to do. Find that root, grab it, stop tumbling, and regroup, dust yourself off, and get moving. because doing nothing
Yes.
is not the option.
Yes. One moment at a time. That's what I'm hearing from you. I like that, breaking it down into smaller steps and just find that one thing. Good stuff. Chief, thank you so much. You've been absolutely amazing. Carlos mentioned one more. It looks like we got one more statement. Great closing statement. Thanks again. Very good conversation. Thank you, Carlos. And thank you all for being here. Chief, I'll follow up with you offline. I hope our paths will cross in person. I'll send you this recording and break out some segments. But again, deeply grateful for your presence today, for your insights, for your leadership and what you're doing in the world. And please keep making a difference.
Thank you so much. The pleasure was mine. This was amazing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care. See you, Chief. Take care, everyone.